Hey, I'm Chef D. Not only do I love serving food, I love being around a table. I love a great conversation, and I love finding out more about people. What makes them who they are? So join me at the kitchen table with me, Chef D. Welcome to the kitchen table with me, Chef D, and my great guest, Jay Ashton. Jay, buddy, pal, you are the hardest working man in show business.
I don't know about that, but I think you are too.
We just saw each other. Backtrack, just we're taping this in April, and we just spent 3 days at the Restaurant Canada show. You were there all 3 days doing your podcast and a whole bunch more. And for those listeners who don't know all about you, in Cole's Notes, give us a little snapshot of what you do and how you love this industry.
Cole's Notes, way back when. Way back when. I've been this is my 33rd year in the industry. I've been in the industry. I think the first time was like KFC, 14-year-old KFC, working in Swift Current at the Dirty Bird, as we call it. And love it. It was actually, you know what? I learned a lot from that, and I still stay in touch with my first boss still today because I just love the industry, and he was such a great leader. Been in the industry a long time. Moved over to Cisco in 2004, I think it was, and been here ever since. Built the resource department for Canada, where we help our customers with the amazing chefs and people that we have on our teams, help with consulting services and resources. And then 2020, that COVID thing came and disrupted everything. And we thought, well, let's build a media network. And we built a media network inside Cisco called SVK, and where we do daily shows, streaming shows, and podcast about our industry, interviewing everything you can think of under the sun. And we also have shows on cooking, to marketing, to social media, to coaching, to celebrities, to non-celebrities, to have Chef D on. He's been on a few times. And everything in between. So this is our third season. We're finishing our third season here at the end of June. And then we're ramping up right now and getting ready for season 4, which starts September 1st.
That's amazing. And just the whole vision of, we went through that 2-year hiatus, as it were, from anything kind of real. And now coming back and just, you and I were talking a lot last week, when I was on your show and even off air, about the changes that are in our industry and what's going to happen, and is it truly a good time for us, or is it truly a time of reckoning? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a time. I think it's interesting because I think everything's shifting so much right now. Technology is monstrous in our industry right now. And it's just a start. Like, do you imagine what it's going to look like in 5 to 10 years right now? What restaurants will look like? I think efficiencies. I actually think technology has to come into play to offset some costs that the consumers are purchasing products on, reduce some labor. I think we can look at some of that to balance, our books and P&Ls now. But I think the future of what we're looking at within the industry, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. I think a lot of new restaurants are coming into Canada. I think a lot of people are getting eager again to open them up, to open up new concepts. We're seeing some crazy cool concepts come into Canada, also starting in Canada. And I think it's a good time. I think it's a good time. It's not easy. It's not an easy time, but it's a good time. And I think for the culinary world, I think we're going to see even more excitement around media building into our food space more, and the amazing stuff that media is doing to highlight these amazing chefs or just amazing products and different things that they're doing. So I'm excited about that as well.
We talk about coming back from COVID and coming back. But you guys out west, like, you've gone through how many oil crises, oil changes, that type of thing. Like, I remember the boom out there, this in early 2000s and that were, dishwashers were becoming kitchen managers. You know what I mean? And,
Yes.
You like, where do you keep up and all that? So
yeah,
I agree. I think it's an exciting time. I think it's a new time,
you know what? I think it is. I'm feeling it. Not to say it that way. I feel it as well. I think this generation that is really running restaurants and learning all these different things, I think they took a good learning from their fathers or their people that were running the restaurants before, that grew up through that. And I think a lot of them are becoming more business savvy within the industry. And when I started consulting with the restaurants in 2004, you would go in there and they thought you were a different, like different language you were speaking when you were talking about cost controls or business and how you look at it as a business model. And today there's more and more people just talk about it that way. It's just a business. It's just the way we do it. We run it as a business, and they're more business savvy than I've ever seen in my life. So I think that's going to also help as we go through, ups and downs. I always say there's a new challenge every day in our industry, it seems. But I think there is. I feel like it's almost like Survivor. Today's the new challenge. I think it just makes this a little bit more and more. But I think there was a lot of leg room on improvement. I think there was a lot of leg room for improvement for operators still today. And that means there's a lot moving into the business sense, but there's a lot of operators out there that still, haven't really moved into that model yet. And I think there's some opportunity there for them to cut costs, save money, make more money. I think social storytelling, as we move into that phase right now, and I'm doing a lot of lectures across Canada on social storytelling from my friend down in Sean Walchef down in San Diego has taught me, is that social storytelling is really this other phase that we're going to go into more of really telling more stories about our operations and less advertising, but more storytelling. And I think doing things like podcasts, social content in a story format is really is where we're headed to, or if not, we're right into it right now. But I'm excited about that. Excited about this stuff.
It's interesting to see how our industry has evolved, and whether it be from, a doctor and a lawyer thinking, hey, we can open up a restaurant and make this work, or a bar, and we know all that horror story. But when I've been in this industry, I'm going to be 59 this year, so you can take it from there. When I used to work, I went to Humber College in 82, downtown Toronto. Like you went, Yonge and Bloor was where I started out, and there might have been 1, 2, 3 restaurants, right? You go down now and you walk any block and there could be 14 different places to grab food, right? And I'm just wondering, are we oversaturated? Or, because that's what I've always, and maybe this is just something I've been thinking about more and more as I see more of it.
One, I think you nailed it, is that I think I don't say it's an oversaturate. I think it's you can look at it that way. I think what you're seeing now, because there's a huge wave now coming into Canada right now. And I always see this around this, back to that economic, uncertainties, is I usually see a wave of these franchises coming in from the US market into Canada around that time period. And it must be like, oh, look, let's come into Canada. It's a little bit easier and safer to put a franchises through Canada out of the US opposed to other markets like Europe and those things. So I think that helps. But I see this wave coming in, and the population is not growing fast enough to account for the amount of people that dine out on a regular basis, right? So you have this huge amount of franchises coming in, and your population doesn't equal it. So someone's going to lose in the end of it, right? Someone's going to lose the game, and it becomes where they cycle out, right? Where people, unfortunately, and there's I think the window of longevity within a brand, if you're not a brand, it's going to be tough. because this generation is going to restaurants for brands, built on their brand. It's not necessarily back in the day in the 80s and 90s, it was what you served. Today, it's what your brand is. And the impact on social is done on that as well, is the percentage that people make decisions based on your social channels. Now, not only your website, but your social feed determines if they go to your restaurant or not. So that is huge. But I think this, I wouldn't say purge, but this cycle out of restaurants, I think it's naturally going to happen just because the population isn't there and they can't, I think the old days, we could talk all day about this stuff. The old days is you used to be able to run and survive on your restaurant if you were busy Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Today, I believe you need to be busy 7 days a week.
100%.
You need to be busy every day of the week, just based on the cost and also the rent and everything else, labor, all these things. I think you have to be busy every day of the week, not just 3 days a week. Because we used to do Fridays and Saturdays, Sundays. If you did like a busy brunch, or if you had an afternoon little purge, or if you did like an industry night on a Sunday, then you had made enough money that would run you through your Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, maybe Thursday, but you could have a quiet week, and then you ramped up on your weekends. That would fund your week. Today, it's too costly. Too costly that places can't do that anymore. You have to be busy 7 days a week. So my trick is I drive around the neighborhoods on the weekdays, like Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and I'll actually notice these restaurants that are like completely empty. I don't know how long they will survive if they don't do certain adjustments or change menus or adjust what they're doing or their models or work on their brand. Unfortunately, those are really good restaurants. Those are really good places, and we're losing a lot of those. So I think there's a cycle right now that we're going through. I saw it in 2008, 2012, and we're about to go through. I think we definitely saw a doozy through COVID, but I do believe that we need to really focus on helping restaurants, one, be busy all the time, in-house, not necessarily on takeout, but definitely within building their brand. We need restaurants to build their brands up. Kids are waiting in lines for hours because of a brand they saw on social, not because of the food.
No, right?
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's I'm now an old timer. How'd that happen?
You said that. You said old timer. You don't say those words.
I just, 100% is just totally different. And you nailed it on the head. Like the average restaurant is $1.5 million before you even get the door open, before you staff it, and that's a lot of money. And then, average rent on something like that, you're paying $24,000 to $30,000 a year or more, and away you go, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
so
it's too hard, right?
Yeah.
And I think also, like, we had a show yesterday where one of the nightclub owners, he said that you could open a nightclub back in the day for $150,000.
Yep.
And today you're looking at $6-7 million. So, and then you're also looking at the rent in downtown Toronto for a nightclub. He said when he finished, they were running around $60-some thousand a month. Can you imagine that much rent?
No.
Like,
I don't sleep as well now. I would never sleep.
Like, but do you imagine? I can't even fathom that, right? The place I ran before I moved into this world, I think we were running $8,900 a month, $60,000 a month. I blew my mind. So it's tough out there, and I think we have to look at it as a business. Back to your point, I don't think you can be just someone that cooks really well and goes, hey, you should start a restaurant. You need to really, and I'm glad a lot of the institutions are putting more business classes and business courses into the field, into the culinary schools and different things like that, because they weren't doing that when I started. We were one of the resources. They would come to my department, and we would actually help them with some classes on business courses because they weren't doing it, and today they are, and which is really good, because you need to be not only an amazing chef, but you also have to have some sort of business mind on as well, in my mind.
Oh, 100%. And just even thinking, you brought up a memory. And I remember being in college and our business courses were Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock. How many classes do you think I made?
With a couple pints? Couple pints and a napkin. Right? What's this food cost thing?
Right? I know, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get, and this is a rhetorical question, I think we have to change the way that we market our industry. You know, like it's always been, oh, you're going to work every weekend. You're going to work, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. And I think we need to focus on share, and that's that storytelling. You know, there's so many amazing stories out there about our industry, about these amazing successes. And it's funny because I forget what show or what I was working on, and we were talking about or it might even been you, ChefD, is that we also there's been so much negative talk. It was like, and in a lot of podcasts out there were always this negative. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, we got to talk about the positive stuff too, or on TV shows, it's always the negative, the struggling restaurant. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it was with some students I've been working with. That's where it was. We were talking about this because they came out with a thing. Let's talk about the riches and the successes of restaurants. I'm like, well, I haven't seen that before. It's always the negative. Yeah. Because there's so much positive on one owning a restaurant, but running a restaurant or working in a restaurant from the dishwasher all the way up to a server to a manager. There's so many key things, and so many people you meet in the business world actually went through those different ranks through the industry, and they may be still in it or they've left it. But especially in Canada, so many Canadians have worked in restaurants to get to where they are in their careers, that we need to really show the positive of it. That you may want to be a chef, but there's so many other opportunities in the industry outside of just being a chef or a restaurant owner. There's a bazillion of them. And that's a really good point. I never thought of it. We should look at, rebranding it, remarketing it, and really pushing more of those positive stories about it.
100%. The guys from Aloe here in Ontario, they do a great job. Jason Benninger at Langdon Hall, they do, great work. And I think it's true. And, I always look at it, when I'm going out, and I still do lots of hands-on catering, and 5 o'clock we're going to an event, and you see people coming home and then go, I couldn't be like that. You know what I mean? What do you do for the next 4 hours?
I know. But that's the beauty about our industry, that it is not, and they always say this, and this is cliche, is it's never the same thing every day. It's always something different. And that is exciting. Maybe a lot of people like that repetitiveness, which I don't think exists. I think that's also changing too, but of a career. But I think the nice thing about our industry is that every day is a different thing. You don't know what or who or what's going to happen, and that's cool. And I think that if the younger generation understands that, I think we'll attract more and more younger people into the industry easily. Because it's always different, and you can go anywhere. You can go anywhere in the world.
100%.
Be a chef, or a server, or a restaurant owner.
And the Gumbo 3000.
Yeah, exactly.
Across Europe,
right? So you can go anywhere in the world and do what we're doing, and it's the same thing, right? Like it's that's exciting. And I think that generation is looking for experiences. And that's where I think you're going to get is the experiences that come with food service and in our industry is huge. There's a different experience every day.
And you can dream huge in our industry. Yeah. Not only can you be a restaurant owner, you could be a chain owner, you could do some really cool things with corporations. And, my hat's off to the chefs that work at like the Airmarks of the world or Compass or any of those where they have to make recipes. And they make recipes at work, and then they push it out to their people. But they're the ones, and if you're anything like me, my creative side goes crazy, and I can do the recipe the first time, and then the second time, I might tweak it because I didn't like it. But they're making it standard, and that just blows my mind, So there's lots and lots of opportunity, I think.
Huge. Huge amount. And we just need to we scared a lot of people through.
100%. We've scared them off for years.
We've scared them off. One, the reality shows back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that scared a lot of people. People screaming at people didn't help.
Yeah.
That scared a lot of people about this as a career. And then COVID really scared a lot of people because it was in the news all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we have to tell stories about the news in a sense of giving people awareness of what is happening within our industry, but it's always negative.
Mm-hmm.
It's always
100%.
negative. And it scares people not only as getting into the industry, but it also scares consumers wanting to even go into these places because they're worried about the cost of what menus may be.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to be careful on how we portray this industry because I think it's delicate in a way, because it's been through the ringer, let's say, over the last 20 years, and it's been a good challenge. It's tough. I think in the old days where you used to be able to do, like let's say the 70s and stuff, where you'd open a restaurant and then it was really easy. You just had to be really good food. That was it. Really good food. And you had to know the owner or the chef. Like, it was just really simple. The math was really simple, and you can make a lot of money. There wasn't a concern really. Like it was a different model in a sense of what it is today, but people could have this really simple life going through in the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s. But today it is completely flipped up on side. And those restaurateurs, I don't think there's many of those left. And those are the guys that really obviously developed what we have. But those are that's the true stories. It's what that is. It's not the stuff on the TV. Is understanding what those were. And they were so super successful, but most of those are retired or they've disappeared, unfortunately.
Yeah. Brother, our times like that just flew by. Can I have you back on?
Yes, anytime. Anytime. I can talk about this industry. I've been through so much in it over the career. I could talk about anything within it. And it's just, I feel like I'm just getting started. That's the weird part of it after 33 years.
Yes.
Is I feel like I'm just getting started. And working with so many restaurants across Canada and the amazing stories. I always say I may leave you with this, is there's a couple things. There's two things I always quote is one, I feel like we're the misfits of the world. As anyone that works in the industry and stays in the industry. We're the misfits, which change the world, right? We're the people that always change things. We are the ones that aren't scared to do certain things. And we're also the ones that aren't scared of hard work. So I always find we're like the misfits. We didn't get that fancy lawyer,
right,
doctor career, right? We stayed here because we enjoyed company and people. So find us, we're the cool misfits in a positive way. And then the second thing is if I could tell any restaurateurs and chefs out there and everything else, is I always say this within the social, when I help restaurants now with creating social content, is my prof said this to me back in university was, any art that you see in any gallery in any part of the world, if you go to any art gallery in New York, that is the big art galleries that all the paintings that created history are in there. All that paintings anywhere that are by masters weren't created by intent. They were created by playing around and messing around and having fun and trying stuff. That is the success of those paintings. They wouldn't be on those walls if they didn't play. And I think in our industry, when it comes to social content, creating menus, creating a great restaurant, changing things up, because they didn't just get Jackson Pollock or Barnum Newman or even Picasso. They didn't make those they didn't just rip them out. Hey, I'm going to make this. It's going to be $30 million. No, they had to create it by playing and creating stuff nonstop. So if you stop doing that, then you're not going to get those masterpieces on the walls. So I believe that in our industry, we have to continue to play and to just keep creating stuff. And if it is a new business and it doesn't work out, create another one. Right? Or if a menu didn't 100%. Work, create another one. Change it. 100%. Just keep creating. Don't get stale. The world does not allow for staleness anymore. 100%. Or just gliding. You can't glide through it anymore. But yeah, those are the two things I always live by now.
Well, my great misfit, I love you, and we'll talk sooner. We'll talk sooner than we'll talk sooner than later down the road. Thank you so much for coming on, and much success.
Awesome.